Hello and welcome to AutoMoments. Now today we're in for a real treat because we're taking a look through my collection of old car brochures. And these are things that in some cases it's vehicles that I've actually driven, but in other cases it's just things I've collected at yard sales and swap meets, or in some cases they were actually given to me by fans of the show. But anyway, so we're gonna have a lot of fun looking through these and commenting on automotive history and just the funny nature of graphic design and stuff like that. So let's get started. And first, let's start things off with a bang. It's the 1972 American Motors Corporation full lineup brochure. So we've got Gremlin, Hornet, Javelin, Matador, and Ambassador. And of course, since I own a 1972 AMC Ambassador, this is a special brochure to me. And even though sadly there is a little bit of wrinkle damage here on the cover, let's dive in. So, boom, right here on the first two pages, it's the American Motors Buyer Protection Plan. And for 1972, they didn't have any new vehicles. Everything was a carryover from last year, which there were a lot of vehicles introduced in 1970 and 1971. So this was kind of a, okay, we have great new cars, now let's work on the marketing. You know, people didn't like the way they were treated at car dealerships. And so AMC said, okay, we're gonna come out with this new warranty. That's what it is, it's a new warranty. At the time, this was one of the better, if not the best warranties offered by an American car company. And of course now, you know, we have 10-year warranties, but they really were pushing this hard to set themselves aside as the consumer-friendly car company for the year. So anyways, enough about the buyer protection plan. Let's actually look at the cars. And of course, you'll recognize our little car anywhere. It still turns a tighter circle than the VW Beetle, still gives good mileage, and it's still fun to drive. So yes, that is the AMC Gremlin, which was marketed as an alternative to the VW Beetle for sure. And you know, a lot of people think of the Gremlin as ugly or a failure, but if you were a teenager or, you know, 20-something in the 1970s and you didn't want to drive a car that looked like your parents', you know, Ford Galaxy, well, then you'd go out and get yourself a Gremlin. It was different, it was weird, it came in cool colors, you could get white letter tires. I mean, the Gremlin was a fun, cheap car. And it succeeded at that. And you could get a V8 engine, which you couldn't get in, say, a Pinto. So I love this line. And this year, in addition to the standard 232.6 that goes zip and the optional 258.6 that goes zap, we're offering a new engine. An optional 304 V8 package that goes. Wow, does it go? It comes back to it being the 1970s. They're kind of writing this a little bit of like tongue-in-cheek ad copy, you know, because 1950s and even 1960s ad copy is just like so effervescently over the top with nonsense, like sparkling new power from the 1956 Packard. It's like, no, it's like, we're gonna joke around here. The engines go zip and zap, you know, it's fun, and it's supposed to be a fun car. And, you know, the Gremlin, in some respects, was a fun car. And of course, you could make it more fun with a sunroof or, you know, a three-speed manual. A three-speed manual. I don't even think a four-speed was available at the time. And so, yeah, you could get a Gremlin with a three-speed stick. Look at that gear shift. It looks like something out of a dump truck. It's so long. Gremlin X, of course, those are worth some money today. You know, if you get a nice Gremlin X that hasn't been all torn up and hot rodded and stuff, you know, they're a pretty neat little collectible to have. Now on to the Hornet. Now I would not mind having a Hornet, especially look at that. That is like 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers right there. A gold car with a black stripe and a black vinyl top. All you need is like Terry Bradshaw and Chuck Noll and you're good to go. And that's a Hornet X, and of course we just talked about the X package, so that was kind of like AMC's sportier package. Although I do have to say I like the very unsporty chrome luggage rack there. So here's a Hornet in grasshopper green, and then the Hornet X, yellow with black vinyl. And I gotta say, two-door Hornets are pretty neat. It's not a coupe, it's a two-door sedan. And I gotta say, I like those. I kind of, if I was gonna own a Hornet, I think it would be neat to have a Hornet sedan. Actually, I think all Hornets are neat, if I'm honest. That's why it was one of their most successful cars. I think the Hornet was very successful using that strategy of like, it's a compact car, but you don't have to feel like it's a cheap car.
I mean, yes, you could still get one with, you know, a 3-speed manual and the base engine and, you know, vinyl seats and rubber floor mats, but in general, you know, they gave you a glove box, they gave you an AM radio, and all of that is like, sounds laughable now that like a glove box was considered a great option. But I mean, there were definitely cheaper cars back then that did not give you glove boxes. You know, that was an extra cost option. And so the fact that Hornet gave you that standard was kind of special. And of course, you know, all the kids today are all like Gucci, Gucci. Well, you know, Gucci Sportabout is what I'm talking about. So the Sportabout was their station wagon, which was pretty cool because it was a lot smaller and sportier than the typical, you know, giant Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser station wagon.
You could literally cruise the Vista.
It says right here, every woman knows her compact does 2 things. It looks good and it carries things that make her look good. So when we designed our compact for women, we did the same. So what they mean here by compact, they actually mean like, you know, the little like folding makeup carrier with the mirror in it. And so the idea here is that, haha, compact and compact car, haha, this would be a great little wagon for a growing family because you can haul the kids, you can haul their stuff, but at the same time, you can fit it easily into a garage and it doesn't drive like a dump truck. It says for the interior, we went all the way to Italy. With love, a world-famous designer played red against dark green against ivory to perfection. The result is the Gucci interior, a very special option. For any woman who's looking for a car, we suggest she take a look at herself in our compact. So, kind of silly, but I really think the Hornet wagon is a great car. And I wish I saw more of them at car shows. I mean, yes, you'll see, you know, the sportier Hornets, you'll see Hornet hatchbacks, which didn't come out till 1973, and, you know, you'll see the Hornet SC 360s, of course. But I really wish I saw more Hornet Sportabouts. I think they're really neat, stylish wagons. Now here's the moneymaker, the Javelin. The calm before the storm. Frankly, most people think our Javelin looks fast, even when it's standing very, very still. Once again, that kind of tongue-in-cheek 1970s ad copy, and can you imagine how hot those seats would be on like an 80-degree or a 90-degree day? High back bucket seats trimmed in optional black nylon corduroy. Corduroy. It's like being wrapped in a blanket while you drive. I mean, I just feel sweaty looking at it. And of course, the interior on the Javelins is a very cool interior with the sort of, I don't know what you would call that, you know, lever shifter or fighter jet gear selector or something like that. Of course, the really cool thing to do is to have a manual transmission, but if you're going to have an automatic, at least the shifter looks cool. Although it is worth mentioning that 1972 was the first year for the Chrysler Torque Flight transmission, which AMC called Torque Command. So, you know, if you were going to get an automatic, you at least were getting a good one. So we say, this Javelin is the calm before the storm, this Javelin is the storm. A 1971 Javelin AMX, at this point, AMX was no longer a separate model. It was a Javelin, but it was called the Javelin AMX. So anyways, it was the same body. It was no longer a 2-seat car like the earlier AMXs were. Anyways, standard power is a 304 V8, then followed by a 360 plus a 401. And of course, 401s are the ones that everybody goes crazy for. I mean, just buying a used 401 engine today is expensive if you're looking for one. Of course, they do mention you can get a 6-cylinder engine on the lower trim Javelins, which I think is kind of cool nowadays. If you see a 6-cylinder Javelin, especially a base one with like, you know, a 3-speed transmission, I think that's pretty cool. Because so many of them, of course, have been engine swapped to have V8s, so the 6s are kind of rare and special in my mind. Not particularly fast, but interesting. And here we are on to Matador. Our intermediate-sized car gives you most of the things you'd want in a family house. Excuse me? Besides 4 walls and a roof over your head, Matador gives you an exterior you won't have to paint, forced air heating, comfortable chairs, wall-to-wall carpeting in the latest decorator colors and fabrics. The brochure here has a sense of humor, and I think that's what's so much fun about this one, is that AMC is enjoying their cars, and they're kind of inviting a clientele to sort of enjoy the cars with them. It's no longer this all sanitized, sparkling advertising speak. They've got a little bit of an edge to them, and I think that's kind of the fun thing about it. Here we are, Matador wagon, and the wood grain stripes on these were always so strange. Like, I don't know why they can't just do a normal wood grain pattern. They do have to do this like gradient, inclined stripe. But I guess now it's kind of a cool historical thing, even though back then I'm sure people thought it was a little bit strange, just like I still think it's a little bit strange. I do love these time-lapse like steering wheel adjustment photos. Like, to prove that the steering wheel is, tiltable, they do these time lapses with like multiple exposures in each position. That car has a clock, which my Ambassador doesn't even have. And speaking of Ambassadors, here is the biggest, the boldest, the most expensive AMC for 1972, the Ambassador. And I have to say, as much as I love my sedan, this car is a dream car for me. I love green, and I love the white vinyl top with the green, and I love that little badge right there that says 401. And I know it's cliche, every AMC collector wishes their AMC had a 401, but my car doesn't need the extra power, but it would be nice to have a 401. I think it would be pretty cool. But at the same time, I'm not complaining. I still love my car, and you see here that this is very similar to my car. Of course, there's a fabric bench seat here, which my car doesn't have because my car is a Brougham, so it has the split buckets. Of course, we see standard air conditioning is going on here, and this car has a clock, which my car also doesn't have. But some cool things here. I love this line, Ambassador, we built it for the Smiths and the Smythes. For the Smythes, we included an extensive portfolio of standard equipment, air conditioning, V8 engine, better automatic transmission, torque command this year, and power brakes. First off, the fact that prior to that, a lot of those things were not standard. Power brakes were not standard the year before, and several years prior, V8 was not standard, and the automatic transmission was not even standard. And you see here they compare it to Chevrolet Caprice, Ford LTD, Plymouth Fury. So yes, it's a luxury car, but you're paying a Ford or a Chevy price. They're not making a direct comparison to, say, Cadillac or Lincoln in the brochure. Sounds pretty cushy, doesn't it? And here are the Brougham Ambassadors, both coupe and sedan, which once again, I wish mine was a 401. Oh well. And you see, mine does not have these seats though. It does have split bench, or I guess you could call those bucket seats, but these here are covered in fabric, whereas mine has perforated vinyl, which the Canadian brochure calls perforated Uganda vinyl, which I don't know why, whereas the US brochure just calls them perforated vinyl. And I also do not have the 3-spoke steering wheel on mine. And somebody else was like, "Oh, don't you want the 3-spoke wheel?" And I said, "No, I like the other wheel better because it has the Ambassador logo in it. I don't want the spoked wheel because it just says American Motors." So the Ambassador logo is what makes the Ambassador steering wheel special to me. The Ambassador wagon with that same strange wood paneling. Very nice indeed. I do love the wood grain on the spoiler is a nice touch. Very, very 1970s. And here are the options, and I'm not going to bore you by, looking through all these, although it is cool to see just how many, options and features and things they offered back in the day when you could actually custom order a car by going down a checklist and checking off stuff and then submitting that to a dealer. Versus today where, you just have like 2 or 3 packages to pick from and it costs $2,000 to get leather seats and a navigation system. And, you see stuff like the Go package and dual exhaust and other kind of performance options, which are pretty cool. And, paint, stripes, vinyl roof, and wood grain, which is cool to see all your different variations and combinations there. It is a reminder of just how simple cars were back then. I mean, especially the Gremlin. I mean, you look at the stuff that's optional on Gremlin. Manual disc brakes are an option. You had to pay, you had front drums in the Gremlin, at least in 1972. You had to pay extra just for discs, and they're not even power discs, they're manual discs. So all kinds of stuff you can special order. Here's the engines and their horsepower numbers, which is neat to see, all the ratings for horsepower and torque. All your different transmission choices. And so that is it. That, finally, is the 1972 brochure for the American Motors Full Line, a fun place in history where the company actually was doing quite well. They had a lot of new or newish product, and they had a lot to boast about. You know, sales were decent, and the economy was pretty good. The fuel crisis hadn't hit yet. So 72 is definitely a high watermark in the history of American Motors. And of course, if you're an American Motors fan, you can check out the multiple AMC-related videos on our channel. There's something there from different time periods, whether it's the 60s, 70s, or the 80s. And of course, I own a 1972 AMC Ambassador, so you should check out my Ambassador vlog videos as well.
And next,
This is a personal favorite of mine. This is the 1979 Continental Mark V. And if you've seen our test drive of the 1979 Lincoln Continental Mark V Bill Blass Designer Edition, that was a very fun video and a gorgeous car. And some of the images used in that video came from this brochure, so I figured it'd be fun to take a closer look and see what's inside. And boom, there's Tom Selleck. Or at least that's what I've been told looking at different Lincoln forums and stuff like that. They say that this character here in the brochure is Tom Selleck of Magnum PI fame. And so that's kind of a fun little factoid there. Another thing that's neat that sticks out here, it says, suppose you could step back through time to 1939 when the original Lincoln Continental was a new car. Wouldn't you eagerly purchase one and keep it through the years, if only as an investment? So they're trying to sell this Continental Mark V Collector's Series as an investment, which in some ways it was, because 1975 was the last year for the Mark V, and since then we have never seen cars like this again. I mean, yes, we have giant luxurious SUVs, but giant personal luxury coupes are not something I ever think are going to return to the automotive market, and so this really is a special, last of its breed kind of car. And another thing that stuck out to me looking at this first page here is, you know, he's examining a suit of armor, and then over here it says Castle Antiques. And multiple old car brochures from this era have people antiquing. Usually it's luxury car brochures, but not always. But it must have been really trendy in the mid to late 70s to go antique shopping, because it keeps showing up in these brochures. I mean, kind of the same way that like modern car brochures for, you know, compact crossovers always show people camping, even though, you know, 99% of Subaru Crosstrek owners never leave the pavement. And for luxury cars, I guess it makes sense. If you have all this money, you know, you might as well go out and buy a suit of armor. Why not? This is the Collector's Series Mark V, and one thing that's interesting to me is that they don't have leather seats. It's actually fabric, although I'm sure leather was an option because you could also get a leather-bound owner's manual and leather-wrapped toolkit. Although I'm guaranteeing you that most Mark V owners were not trying to do their own maintenance, so that leather toolkit was, you know, probably never opened. Oh, and you can also get a vinyl padded fake spare tire hump, because why not? Oh, the 70s were a great time. All right, so now we're getting into the designer edition. So forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation. I think it's Cartier. You know, I'm sure that like 80% of people who read this is like, oh, it's the Cartier. It's the Jimmy Carter edition. So anyways, the Cartier edition, people dressed up, going out to parties, and then there we do actually have leather seats there. So that is the Cartier edition. Aha, this is the greatest Continental Mark V of all, the Bill Blass Designer Edition. So the one I drove actually had opera windows, but I believe the standard equipment was the fake convertible top, which I guess here the real name is white carriage roof, and then it says opera windows also available. So here's the white leather, dark blue accents. It's the Bill Blass edition. It's wonderful. If you want to see more of this, of course, you should go watch our Time Warp test drive video. This is really a special car, I gotta say. I loved driving it, and I loved looking at it even more. And of course, channeling Bill Blass, the very nautical theme, the little anchor emblems, and then, you know, the car just parked, chilling here at the wharf as the boats float in the sea. I mean, what more could you want? This is luxury in a photo. Well, late 1970s luxury in a photo. Look at that suit. Look at that guy. And now the Poochie edition, which once again, I'm sure us Americans have butchered the pronunciation. It that there damn Pookie edition. So anyways, the image here looks like the colors are a little bit washed out, but it says it's shown in medium turquoise metallic with optional dual wideband white sidewall tires. Oh, look at those tires, man. So we talk about Pucci here, Emilio Pucci of Florence. So, you know, we've had France, we've been to France with Cartier, we've been to Italy with Pucci, and now we have Bill Blass, of course, is the lone American designer, which I think that's kind of what makes the Bill Blass special for me, is that he was the only American to have a designer edition. And I think that's what makes it so special. Look at that guy. I bet he trades a lot of stocks. Gonna go to an antique store later. Now, once again, a name that gets butchered, Givenchy. And I know that because I actually went and watched a commercial for Mark V's on YouTube, so it's the Givenchy edition. Although, I have not heard a single person call it that. Every time it's, I got me a Givenchy Mark V. Sounds like I'm on Dukes of Hazzard. Oh look, you can look through the opera window as rich people kiss in the background. That is the Givenchy edition. And lastly, the Continental Mark V Luxury Group option. So this was kind of the thing where you could personalize it to make it your own, which is kind of neat because you really don't see any modern cars that allow that. Of course, today everything is you just pick an option package and then the guy at the dealership Googles on Auto Trader which dealership closest to them has the Ford Fusion with the option package you want. So the idea of being able to custom order a car is really cool and something you don't see a lot of anymore. And you also don't see a lot of these luscious velour seats there or these jackets with the padded elbows. Oh, I can feel that seat in my dreams and it is more comfortable than my bed. Like, she's looking straight up ready to doze off. I don't blame her. These seats are amazing. Here's some of the options you can get talking about like special ordering stuff. It's the convertible look reborn, but it's not a real convertible. I never understood the carriage roof thing. It's like, why would you spend extra money to have a fake convertible? Oh no, there are some convertible Mark V's that were made by third-party conversion companies, and I think those are pretty freaking cool. And the turbine wheels will always be the best choice. There is never a better choice than turbine wheels. I'm sorry. You can look, I mean, the hubcaps, fine, whatever, spokes, fine. Turbine wheels, where it's at. Also, those wrought iron chairs are probably severely uncomfortable. They look luxurious, but I bet actually sitting in one, quite painful. Oh man, look at that. We got our miles to empty gauge, which, you know, was, ooh, computers, beep, boop, beep, bop, bop, beep, boop. We've got a thermometer, all the different colors you could choose from. Back when cars came in real colors, other than just like, you know, if this was a modern car color chart, like it would be like this, it'd be like that. It'd be like, you get white, red, black, and gray, you know? Oh, Breaker 19, this here's the rubber duck, got a CB radio, CB TV, DVD, HD. And of course you can get quadrasonic 8-track or regular cassette, which is pretty neat. All your options and features and stuff. Holy smokes, they give you a lot of choices. So that is the Continental Mark V 1979 brochure. Thank you for looking through it with me. Of course, be sure and go check out our time warp test drive of the 1979 Bill Blass edition Mark V. It really was a lot of fun, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Now this is an interesting brochure. Now you might remember that I already did a brochure tour for a 1975 Bricklin, which actually was 2 brochures for a 1975 Bricklin. This is the harder to find 1974 Bricklin brochure. And I'd actually mentioned in the video that I didn't know if Bricklin made a 74 brochure. Well, they did. I just didn't look hard enough for it. And so one of our viewers, Greg, was kind enough to reach out to me and offer to mail me this brochure. So thanks a lot, Greg, for sharing. This is all thanks to you. Let's take a look and see what's inside. And this one is much different graphically from the 1975 brochure. It has this kind of, you know, car on a white backdrop, just the vehicle, sort of a minimalist design, which, if you remember the other brochures, they had this dark orange and black and, you know, photos of the American Southwest kind of thing, whereas this is just all about the car and the text. And once again, having driven a Bricklin, there were parts of it that were revolutionary. The powertrain is pretty conventional, but you know, the body panels and the doors and some of the safety features, it was definitely cutting edge for the time. So, you know, yes, this is all PR speak, but there's also some truth to it. Being the Bricklin Safety Vehicle 1, safety is the number one thing. The Bricklin safety features, you'll think they're ahead of their time. We think it's about time. And 70's brochures are like, you're too smart to fall for marketing, so we're gonna make our marketing smart so you fall for it. But anyway, so it talks about the Bricklin safety features, you know, the bumpers, the doors that lift up and not into traffic, and you know, the acrylic body panels, all that. Ooh, now this is something special. We'll come back to this in a minute, so remind me and I'll show that to you again. We talk about the energy-absorbing bumper. You'll think it's ahead of its time. We think it's about time. I guess maybe that was their slogan for 1974. Federal safety standards required all cars at that point in time could withstand an impact of 5 miles per hour with no damage to, you know, headlights, taillights, that kind of thing. Which, you know, now that we've been building cars for another 40, 50 years, we kind of realize, like, the concept with today's car is sacrifice the car, save the driver. You know, you tap a bicycle going 5 miles per hour and the whole car explodes into shreds of plastic, but the idea is that it saves your life. Whereas back then, the idea was like, well, we want drivers to be able to hit things and not totally destroy their car because it costs money to repair things. And the idea was that if you could hit something and not damage the car, the driver would be safe. And so that's what these energy-absorbing retractable bumpers, the idea was that Bricklin claimed they could, instead of 5 miles per hour, they could withstand 10 mile per hour impacts and, you know, not damage the vehicle. And I guess they just had big, you know, shock absorbers that would collapse in and out whenever you hit something. So, sorry, it's hard to get this all on camera because this is such a large brochure. I mean, you see the size of my hand here. It's not that I have tiny hands. It's just this is an oversized brochure compared to some of the other ones. The Bricklin body, you'll think it's ahead of its age, blah, blah. So anyways, here is, you know, talking about the body, talking about the plastic. It's rust-proof. Plastic obviously doesn't rust, and there's no superfluous chrome trim. And once again, the language here is very similar to the other Bricklin brochure, but it's very true. I mean, aside from like the teeny tiny little bit of bright work on the B logo there was no chrome anywhere on this car. I guess the wheels. That was kind of the idea. Herb Grass hated chrome, and I mean, if you remember what cars from Detroit looked like, big chrome grills and hood ornaments and trim and rub strips and all that stuff is fine, but unlike today's cars where those chrome accents are made from plastic, back then those chrome accents were made from metal, and so they could trap salt and moisture under them, and then they would rust, and they would hold moisture against your door, and then the door would rust, and then the trim would rust, and if you had a light-colored car, you have rust marks coming down your trim. So the idea of a car that, you know, doesn't have material that will rust on it was definitely appealing, not just because of obvious rust spots like fenders and you know, wheel wells and stuff, but also just because you'd get rust in and around emblems where it would hold salt residue against the car if you, of course, lived in a state that had a lot of snow. Bricklin's gull-wing doors. Ooh. And as I've said before, a big misconception about gull-wing doors is that you'll scrape the car next to you when you open your door, but that's actually less likely because they need less clearance space than a conventionally opening, you know, side-to-side door. So, because the hinge is so far back on the roof, or so far in on the roof, that the door needs less horizontal room when you open it. And of course, if you want to know more about the doors, you can go back and watch my full 20-minute video on the Bricklin where we talk about all the problems they had with the electro-hydraulic system and oil pressure and the electric motors burning out and the doors breaking and people getting stuck in their cars. But the good thing is nowadays there's an air compressor or a compressed air retrofit for the door systems that's a lot safer and a lot faster and easier to use. So if you're a Bricklin owner, there's a good chance you may already have it, because it was such a popular conversion kit. The Bricklin's interior. Now, having actually sat in a Bricklin and drove it, I wasn't like amazed by the interior, but the seats were fine. It's interesting, they don't have huge side bolsters, but this like fake suede material that they're made out of is very grippy. It like holds onto your clothes, and so even though you don't have enormous side bolsters, the seat does a pretty good job of holding you in place, you know, if you're doing some aggressive driving. The only downside, of course, is when you go to get out, you're like, because you can't, it's not like an old school vinyl seat where you can just slide right off. It kind of holds on to you a little bit. Speaking of the interior, check out that steering wheel. That is an AMC steering wheel with a Bricklin logo in the middle. And if you think I'm kidding, just check this out. Hang on. So here is the brochure for the 1972 American Motors lineup. If we get to some interior photos here, I'll prove to you that right there is an AMC steering wheel, which matches the Bricklin steering wheel. Just kind of a fun fact there, and that was something Malcolm Bricklin even said during our interview, was that, part of the genius of the car was that a lot of the parts were used from other car company parts bins, which, if you're doing a limited run of vehicles, that's a good way to save money. I mean, if you're building 200,000 cars a year, it's worth investing to build your own parts. But if you're building 5,000 cars a year, instead of spending $2 million to, design a steering wheel, why not just buy a steering wheel off the shelf? The Bricklin's performance. So, of course, this being the 1974 Bricklin, speaking of off-the-shelf parts, it's powered by an American Motors, it just says American made, but it's an American Motors 360 cubic inch V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor. And I don't have exact performance numbers, but everybody says the AMC-powered Bricklins from 1974 were faster than the Ford-powered Bricklins from 1975 and 76. And of course, you could get a 4-speed with the AMC, which you couldn't get with the Ford engine. Notice there's no actual numbers quoted here. It says, furthermore, the Bricklin's top cruising speed is well above top legal speeds. Well, the national highway speed limit at the time was what, like 55, 65 maybe? Above legal speeds could be anywhere from, 70 miles an hour up to 200 miles per hour. So, but anyways. And then, of course, this is another big thing with safety. It says, we don't call the Bricklin a safety vehicle just because it has so many features to help protect you in case of an accident, but because it has been designed from a performance standpoint to help prevent you from getting into an accident in the first place. And that sounds kind of silly, but if you think back to the 1970s, it does kind of make sense. As much as I love my AMC Ambassador, I know that I have to drive extremely defensively because you don't know what other idiots on the road are going to do, and you kind of have to plan ahead with a car like that. Whereas a car that has better handling, you can get yourself out of harm's way more easily, without screeching tires and locking up brakes and heaving all over the road. So yes, handling is a safety feature, but I don't think you're going to convince suburban moms to trade in their Escalade for a Corvette just because it handles better. I digress. And so that is it for the Bricklin brochure, but wait, there's more. Included in each Bricklin brochure is an official Bricklin poster. So we talked in one of my previous videos about things you'd hang on your bedroom wall, and I don't know how many kids have a Bricklin poster hanging on their bedroom wall, but I gotta say, this is pretty neat. So speaking of cars with gull-wing doors, I think it's time for another brochure that, if you like weird opening doors, this is for you. The DeLorean. And I think multiple DeLorean brochures were made over the years. This is the one I have. I'm not 100% sure of what year it is, but it has some great photos. And I mean, even here on the front cover, you see this wonderful sort of like etched relief gloss image of the car, which catches the light. It's pretty neat, I gotta say. So anyways, let's take a look inside at presenting the DeLorean. And like I said, this is an original brochure. You can see a little bit of the rust on the staples there. So obviously this is the real deal. And we start with a picture of John DeLorean himself and a very gushing paragraph of PR speak talking about how wonderful of a person he is. Anyway, so we see here DeLorean Motor Company was founded in 1975. John DeLorean set out to prove he could make a total performance car that would be economical to run and safe to drive, and then fly you to the moon and everything else. And so I love this line here. The long-awaited transportation revolution has now begun, and a leader has emerged to show us the way. The DeLorean. Geez, you think people today worship Elon Musk? At least he never had anything like that in his brochures.
Anyways, let's take a look at DeLorean, the next generation, and we have all these great, very 80s photographs. People in their suits and their private jets, and it was very much the 1980s. And lovely fold out here of a DeLorean on sort of a blue background floating in space. Other wonderful stock photos here of the car, talking about the DeLorean sparks the imagination like a classic vision of things to come. What does that even mean? It's just PR speak, it's nonsense. New materials, new technology, and traditional values masterfully joined in a showcase of contemporary engineering. Okay. So, but I mean, you can imagine if you were somebody coming from, a Chevy dealership or a Plymouth dealership and you saw a DeLorean sitting there and you picked up a DeLorean brochure, I mean, it really would seem revolutionary. It's easy for us to laugh at it now, but I mean, back then, this car looked like nothing else, and the idea behind it was like nothing else on the road. And that's something I've mentioned about the DeLorean before. The car sort of shapeshifts depending on what angle you look at it. From the side, it's kind of aggressive and wedgy, but from the front, it kind of has a bit of like a silver pancake look to it. So anyways, total driver satisfaction, some more cool stock photos, and I gotta say, I love those taillights. It is so 80s, but it's like good 80s. And for the longest time, 80s stuff was ridiculed, and of course now, thanks to Radwood, everybody loves 80s stuff. And so, I don't need to tell you that those are some really freaking cool taillights. Now, I'm not a DeLorean expert, but I believe that this is one of the earlier DeLoreans because it's got that little notch on the hood there. I guess that went away later. And, maybe these photos were taken early on and then got used over and over again. Here's a great picture of the interior, which is very, very gray. And you got to remember, even though it wasn't the 70s anymore, there were still plenty of cars that had, brown interiors and maroon interiors and interiors with, wood grain and silver knobs. So this whole like black plastic and gray leather kind of look was pretty cutting edge at the time versus, the sort of stuff that American consumers were used to. DeLorean, matchless detail for comfort and convenience. Well, having actually driven one, yeah, it's a sports car designed for two people, so, no sports car has that much cargo space. But, yeah, I gotta say that there are definitely other cars that are more ergonomically designed. And, of course, the cutout windows there are a big complaint that auto journalists had at the time. DeLorean, engineered for total performance. The way the 35-65 rear weight bias enables fully independent suspension to combine with rack and pinion steering for fast, sensitive handling that needs no power system. So I having driven one, I'm not a professional driver, but I definitely got the feeling that, the rear end of the car kind of wanted to step out on you. And I've heard from other people who are professional drivers that, driving a DeLorean is an experience. It's a cool car, it's a fun car, but, if you don't know what you're doing, you can easily get yourself in trouble with all that rear biased weight. And of course, in the days long before traction control and stability control and that sort of thing, it's all up to the driver to not end up in trouble with a car like that. DeLorean, anatomy of excellence. A light alloy 90-degree V6 with overhead camshafts. So there's the engine, which of course DeLorean did not make. They bought from Peugeot, Renault, Volvo. I guess it was a combined design that the three companies shared. And it was a fairly popular engine. I mean, it ended up in lots of other vehicles. Even the Eagle Premier here in America used a version of that, I believe. So, and then of course, the fact that the rear tires are bigger than the front tires, that was to help the handling be safer, to have offset tire sizes there. So, make sure when you go into a tire shop, you don't have them rotate your tires and whoops, suddenly the big tires are in the front. Sorry, that's a stupid joke. Anyways though, so it's cool to see all these sort of cutaway photos of the car, and that's what makes this a really great brochure. Is there's lots of pictures in terms of not just pretty pictures of the car, but pretty pictures of the inside of the car. And then of course here we have all these great factory photos, the factory in Northern Ireland, which was sort of an infamous venture, but to see them installing the engine and, working on the car and working on the chassis there and putting the body panels on, it's really cool to have those vintage photos because a lot of car brochures do not include factory images. So that is super cool. a good brochure in general, just in terms of great photos, great color, great cutaways, great images of the car, and other tangential images like the factory and stuff are cool to have. And then of course a great ending photo there of the door up and looking out over the marina. That is a very 1980s. It seems like, you know, the 80s were all about suits and private jets and boats, and, you know, I guess that was late 70s, early 80s, that kind of yacht rock era where people were all about boats. So that is the 1980s DeLorean brochure with its wonderful embossed cover. And if you'd like to see a DeLorean in action, you should check out our video we did. We did a review of one, including John DeLorean's personal story, which is very interesting. So you can go check out our Time Warp test drive video and learn more about the DeLorean.
So hopefully you enjoyed that, but now you're in for a real treat. This is a 1977 Chevrolet Chevette brochure, and this was actually a gift from a friend. You might recognize him on Twitter. He and I go back and forth posting junk about old cars all the time. So, and that's a plug for my Twitter too. If you like old car garbage and can't get enough here on YouTube, you should go follow me on Twitter, and I post stuff like this all the time. But anyways, this is a gift from my friend. He bought these at an estate sale, and so he decided to give me a 1977 Chevrolet Chevette brochure. And of course, this is just hilarious because, you know, what are friends for if not to tell each other about a car like Chevette? I think friends would tell each other not to buy a car like a Chevette. But anyways, let's take a trip down memory lane and enjoy this great brochure. So the Chevrolet Chevette came out in 1976, and it is a rear-wheel drive economy car that, you know, was supposed to compete with the Japanese. This was their answer, the Chevette. The word's getting around, Chevette. For over a year now, people have driven it, packed it with suitcases, filled it with children, wheeled it around corners, and saved money in it. And they like it, so much so that a great many of them, like Dwayne, I guess that's Dwayne, have gone past just liking their Chevette to out and out recommending it to their friends. Owners of 1976 Chevettes mentioned throughout this catalog are represented by professional models. So that's not actually Dwayne there. Also, this is a fun fact too. So look at this. So they obviously have gone somewhere to get fast food. Look how small that cup is. Like, this is how you could tell this was a long time ago, because if this was an ad today, it'd be like a 45-ounce mega gulp cup. But instead, he's drinking, I mean, that has to be like a, what, an 8-ounce, maybe a 12-ounce soda? Not that any of this matters, I just think it's kind of funny. Anyways, all right, enough about 1970s food. Look at how small those tires are. They look like wheelbarrow tires. 43 miles to the gallon highway, 31 miles per gallon city. But of course, this is back when EPA figures were just completely off the wall, like not accurate. It's like you would only get 43 going downhill with the engine off. The EPA numbers, even though they are not accurate to your real life mileage, they were still a valuable way to compare other cars to each other. Since they're all being rated the same way, even though the numbers were not accurate to real life, they were accurate as compared to each other. So a car that says 43 miles per gallon might not actually get 43, but it will still get better than a car that gets, 5 miles per gallon, like a Lincoln Continental. Standard 1.4 liter engine has up to 9.6 more horsepower this year. The available 1.6 liter, which was certainly no slouch when it came to moving out last year. Yes, a 1.6 liter. So here are the actual horsepower ratings. The 1.4 liter makes 57 horsepower. And the 1.6 liter makes 63 horsepower. Like, what? It would be exciting to drive, but not for the right reasons. Anyway, so here's more Chevette stuff, brake linings, rack and pinion steering, which was a relatively new thing for American cars, at least at that point in time. I mean, the Pinto, the Mustang II, the AMC Pacer had rack and pinion steering, but it's not like every single car had it. I remember somebody saying that AMC bought a lot of their rack and pinion steering units from General Motors, and that they had all kinds of problems with them. So my guess is that there were probably problems with this system too. In Massachusetts, Kimball Wyman liked the way his Chevette was built so much, he let a few friends at work drive it. 3 have bought their own so far. So I will say, I miss the days when car brochures could have like regular looking people in it. Like, you know, if this was a brochure from today, you know, first off, this would be some obnoxious like small crossover SUV and he would be camping instead of parked in the middle of a dock. But you could not have a guy that looks like that today. Like, he's just a regular looking dude. They would have to have some like super skinny guy with like a perfect haircut and like 6-pack abs, not just good old Kimball here with his foot up on the bumper. You know, everybody has to be gorgeous now. So I don't know, I like when people could look normal and be in car advertisements. Because, oh, it's a solid unitized body. Once again, unibody might seem boring to our Japanese and European friends, but to Americans, unibody construction was still relatively interesting at the time, unless of course you were an AMC owner, which your cars had been unibody forever. Ta-da! Look at that! It's a Rally 1.6. Oh, in Boston, Margaret Connolly recommends Chevette to her friends as a wise buy. One good reason, the people she bought hers from. And so this was one thing that GM definitely had over Japanese competition. And it says here, more than 6,000 Chevy dealers everywhere. And so definitely in the 1970s, Chevy and GM and even the big three as a whole all had way more dealerships than what you would get with a Japanese car or, you know, even AMC in terms of coverage. So there was definitely an appeal of buying a car like this because, you know, well, even if it is trash, at least I can get it fixed easily. But on the flip side, it's not like GM dealers were known for treating people exceptionally well, or any car dealership for that matter. And, you know, there was actually a lot of consumer studies done at that point in time that, like, people didn't like the car shopping experience. They felt like dealers were unfair, people were ripping them off, that kind of thing. So I think part of the reason that Japanese dealerships succeeded in the United States and Japanese car brands overall succeeded was because they put a lot of effort into providing a better dealership experience than what the American dealers did. But anyways, here's also another thing that sticks out to me. Do it yourself and save. Chevette is a car meant to save you money, so in the glove compartment you'll find a handy service manual. Name one car brochure today that actively tells you you should work on your own car. None of them, all of them, every single one of them is all about getting you into the dealer to spend as much money on useless crap as possible. You know, you can't even replace a headlight bulb without your car sending you an email telling you to take it to a dealership for service. So here is Chevy actively encouraging you to work on your own car and not spend money at the dealership getting work done, which is hilarious because now it's all about going to the dealer. Look at that interior. In Los Angeles, Reinhard Lesser. Where do they come up with these names? Are these actual people's names? Reinhard Lesser liked it inside the Chevette a lot. He bought one. Now his son drives it a lot. So is this Reinhard or his son? I'm very confused. Also, I think it's funny that the basest base trim level was called Scooter. So you could get a Chevette Scooter. And then there's cloth, vinyl, custom vinyl, whatever. Talking about car interiors, which on one hand, we all know this is an extremely crappy low-rent interior. But on the other hand, it is still more colorful than any car interior you can get on an economy car today, where everything's either just black or charcoal, or maybe tan if you're lucky. In Minnesota, Miss Maxine Clausen simply tells everybody that what she likes best about her Chevette is simply everything. What is he running toward? Because the car is here, and he's running this direction. Oh, whatever. I'm not going to read through all these because it's just too many. Oh, check it out. So here are all the different options and trims and stuff. So here I was talking about earlier, there's the Scooter. Scooter doesn't even have the stripes or the trim or special knickknacks on it. It's literally the basest of base cars. Our lowest price Chevette offers you a special choice, a fold down rear seat which you can delete for added savings and added cargo area. So you could literally just get a Chevette with a front seat only, which it's kind of interesting because my dad said back in the day a lot of people bought Chevettes to use as sort of cheap cargo vehicles, farms or hardware stores or things like that. I mean, Chevettes were crappy, they were cheap, so you didn't feel bad getting them full of dirt and junk and stuff. So you just buy a Chevette, either fold down the seat or tear it out, and then you have a handy dandy waterproof little runabout that, if you want to haul stuff around, bags of feed or, flower pots or whatever people do who have hardware stores, Chevette might actually be a really good little car for something like that. So anyway, so we have the hatchback coupe, the Rally Sport with the gutsy 1.6 liter engine, sport shifter, and then there's the Sandpiper, our newest Chevette with eye-catching identification and special trim that belong to the Sandpiper alone. Ooh. Once again, it's an economy car, but at least you could get cool interiors and details and stuff like that. I wish you could get stuff like that on economy cars today. So that is the 1977 Chevette. It'll drive you happy. So thank you for taking a moment to look through this Chevette brochure. But we're not done yet. We're just done with Chevette. Yes, I know, that's a really intelligent rhyme. Hang on. So speaking of other GM economy cars with questionable quality, Citation. Citation was an all-new, revolutionary thing for GM. It was called part of this plan called the X cars, and they were supposed to be front-wheel drive and great mileage and great handling and whatever. But in typical GM way, they had all these great ideas that were horrendously executed, that had horrible quality problems, not to mention the fact that they were kind of goofy looking. And so Citation and the other X cars, which were supposed to be revolutionary, kind of weren't. So they had revolutionarily bad quality. But let's take a look. Citation, a whole new kind of compact car. And a small note for those of you who don't know your Citation history, and I'll forgive you if you don't, but in the first year alone, Citation sold something like 800,000 copies. So I mean, this was a big deal for GM, but then people began to discover that the car had horrendous quality and all kinds of problems, like the rear brakes would lock up and the car would crash, and just general poorly built 1980s, late 70s GM nonsense. But it was a big deal because this was an earnest effort by General Motors to try and downsize their vehicles while maintaining decent interior room, and the Citation did do that pretty successfully. Also, it was one of their first front-wheel drive cars. So see, snow, mud, ice, Citation has the pull of front-wheel drive to help you get through. So, I don't know if a Citation could actually do that, climb a snowy mountain hill, but it would certainly do a better job than, something with rear-wheel drive like a Nova. The more you look into it, the more beautiful it looks. Well, that's certainly a statement. And I will say, it's a unique shape. There was definitely a feeling in the 1980s that the 5-door hatch was going to become a thing. And if you think about it, we're all driving 5-door hatches today with crossovers and stuff. So I mean, the idea of a 5-door hatch isn't a terrible idea. So it is designed to be space efficient more so than a lot of their huge cars from the 70s were. Why do car ads always show people skiing? What is it about skiing? Do people actually ski this much, or is this just a thing that car companies think looks good, is to show people skiing? I don't know. The pull of front-wheel drive, the comfort of a Chevrolet ride. So, is that a Citation towing a boat? Yeah, that's a Citation towing a boat. Ooh, a sexy night on the town in our Citation Club Coupe. Which is kind of it's got a weird notchback, bustle back kind of thing going on. It's like a hatchback that they put a trunk on. I guess it's kind of like a Model 3. I'm sorry to all the Tesla fanboys that I just compared the Tesla Model 3 to a Chevrolet Citation, but the build quality probably isn't that different. And once you drive it, we think you'll agree that's the most beautiful part about it. You're going to love the way it feels behind the wheel, the way it parks in compact spaces and maneuvers in cramped quarters. You're going to like the way it moves with authority. Who writes this stuff? All Citations smooth out the road. The X11 unwinds it. So yes, they made a sporty Citation. Oh, look at those fake vents. X11. The letter X means fast. Does this look like the steering wheel of a fast car to you? Although they do have a crotch HVAC vent, so that's a nice touch. If you've ever driven a sporty car with front-wheel drive, rack and pinion steering, and rear stabilizer bars, you have an idea of the agility and sheer driving fun of the Citation X11. It says, and if while you're pondering the beauty of an X11 in your immediate driving future, keep that impressive Citation EPA estimated fuel economy figure on page 2 in mind. After all, another aspect of covering ground quickly is not having to stop for gas too often. The poor people who had to write these brochures. Let's go back to page 2. What is that figure? 24 city, 38 highway. So there you go. If you're driving an X11, and there's an X11 coupe too. A good look at a feature standard on every 1980 Citation. Good looks. Wow, this is just, Pulitzer Prize winning writing right here. And yes, I know that's an award for journalism, not car brochures. I feel like late 70s, early 80s GM cars just look so uninspired. Like, it's not even, it's ugly isn't the right word, because it's not ugly, it's just, it's just blah. Like, I don't know, doesn't do it for me. Those wheels do it for me, though. Although they look like they belong on like a Chevy pickup truck, not an economy car. Standard in the compact Chevy Citation, mid-sized room, and this is one thing they actually did do right. I mean, Citations were roomy, especially compared to other compact cars, and if you were coming out of a large American car and you didn't want to buy a Japanese car, this would be a reasonable vehicle to downsize in. Like I was saying with the Chevette, at least you could get cool colors in it. Like nowadays, it's black and tan. Look at that. Oh, look at that brown, like weave, plaid looking seat, or vinyl with inserts. Like at least, look at all these colors. Regular mid-sized cars. Do you think you can buy, a Chevy Malibu in yellow or green? I mean, maybe green, but you never see them. You might be able to buy one, but dealers will never stock them because they only stock silver, gray, black, white, and then they'll order like one red car a month just to spice it up a little bit. And look, you could spice it up with two tones, beige and green, or beige and camel, or light blue and dark blue, or light camel and regular camel. So I mean, yes, you could get interesting colors, which is fun. Or you could get a floor shifter or a column shifter. I don't think anything has a column shifter hardly anymore these days. A look inside at some of the Citation's standard features. These are the rear brakes that lock up and cause accidents. I love cutaway drawings like this, because can you imagine you go to art school, you get a degree in art or graphic design or whatever, and this is what you get to do. This wasn't done on a computer. Some human being had to draw this. Reminds me of like a children's picture dictionary where it explains how cars work. It's like, this is the motor, this is the gas tank. Slipstream styling, efficient aerodynamics, low 0.417 drag coefficient. So let's compare this to a modern Chevy. So a 2016 Chevrolet Malibu has a drag coefficient of 0.29. So it's like half of that. But when you compare this to, a Chevy Impala or whatever from 1979, that was probably a huge difference. So bit by bit, the 80s, even though we laugh at, some of the horrendous mistakes the car companies made, they were learning and advancing their products. And here's the actual engines. Let's get the actual engine numbers here. So, a 2.5 liter, 2-barrel, 4-cylinder, and has a power rating of 90 horsepower. And the California version is the same, so they're actually certified for both places. Ooh, some options. A 2.8 liter V6 engine. So let's see, a 2.8 liter V6 with a 2-barrel carburetor, making 115 horsepower. So we went from 90 to 115. And then but the California version only makes 110. Well, that is the 1980 Chevy Citation. Not total garbage, some great ideas, but in typical GM fashion, maybe not executed as well as they should have been. And I think this is a fitting way to wrap things up. The 1987 AMC Eagle brochure, and I guess you could consider this the last AMC brochure.
yes, there were Jeep brochures published, and technically there was a pamphlet sent out for the 1988 Eagle wagon, which was technically a Chrysler product, but it's not really a full color brochure. And so this is kind of, for all intents and purposes, the last real AMC brochure. And it's kind of sad when you think about it that way. And you see this lone image of the Eagle driving along a road all by itself in the distance. I mean, you can't even tell what the car is, basically. And it's kind of sad when you think about it. But at the same time, it is a very special brochure, and so I think we'll enjoy taking a look through it. And of course, if you are a fan of AMC Eagles, you should check out our video. We drove a 1986 AMC Eagle wagon and actually went off-road in it. And so that's a pretty cool thing you should go check out if you're a fan of old AMCs and haven't seen that already. Now, this has a theme. First off, it's weird that it's a vertical brochure. See, you kind of open it this way and read it almost like a calendar, I guess. And each one of the pages starts with a word that ends with the letter N and then an apostrophe. So, you know, we've got hustlin', relaxin', so on and so forth. I'll save the others so they're a secret. They're fun. We'll go by one. But anyway, so for hustlin', we talk about the standard 4.2 liter or 258 cubic inch displacement 6-cylinder engine. So this was AMC's standard 6-cylinder engine, and by this point it was the only option for Eagle in terms of engines. Here it makes like 112 horsepower, which is kind of sad at that point in time. It is available with a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, and so of course, you know, they're trying to, even though the standard engine was a 6-cylinder, there was no 4-cylinder at this point. The fact of the matter is, you know, they were still trying to get that gas mileage out of it, you know, offering a manual transmission. And of course, for those who don't know, the AMC Eagle was a 4-wheel drive car, and it was kind of the first of its type in that it was combined the off-road ability of a truck or a Jeep with the comfort of a passenger car. And of course, part of the secret to that was the select drive system, and so that's a picture there of the, you know, viscous coupling and chain drive that sent power to the rear wheels and to the front wheels. So that's cool that they actually have a picture of the select drive 4-wheel drive system there. I really like that. And of course, being a 4-wheel drive vehicle, you know, all the pictures in the brochure show it doing, you know, oh, it's driving in the rain, it's driving in the snow, it's driving in the dirt, you know, and so they definitely driving in the sand. So they definitely want to show off its capabilities, and you see that here in the brochure. And I'm 90% sure this is fake snow. I mean, it just looks too perfect, right? I mean, it looks like soap flakes. You notice also there's no melted snow on the car, too. Right? Like, you don't see any water beads running down the hood. So that's probably another reason why. Either way, it's a cool picture. And the blacked out Eagle wagons are really cool. Speaking of blacked out Eagle wagons, here's another one with that cool, I don't know if the camera can see it, the 4x4 logo on the panel there, and then all black. Really a sharp design. Also, what's also sharp is that guy's hair. Look at that haircut. He's got the whoop curl on the front of his head. And he's talking about relaxing. So first we had hustling, then relaxing. And so we're inside the Eagle, we're relaxing. Fake wood trim and vinyl padded opera windows on the sedan. And the Eagle was marketed as a luxury vehicle. I mean, it was not marketed against Cadillacs or anything, but the idea was that, you know, compared to buying a pickup truck or, you know, a Ford Bronco or something like that, you know, the Eagle was a 4-wheel drive vehicle that offered carpet and leather and a little more luxury than you might find in your standard off-road vehicle, especially more luxury than you would find in like a Jeep CJ. So okay, so now we have loading. So we had hustling, relaxing, and loading. We've got optional luggage rack, we've got luggage up on there. Cargo floor is actually quite high, and there's no tailgate, so liftover height is quite high, so there's not a ton of room in an Eagle, but it does say it offers 57 cubic feet, which is not bad compared to modern crossovers, I guess, although, you know, I still feel like the space maybe isn't as usable as some cars that offer more options for interior packaging. Very, very wonderful photograph here. I mean, just the way the light hits it. Oh, that blacked out Eagle. Oh, time for hauling. So let's see, we've got hustling, relaxing, loading, and hauling. So we're gonna go hauling with our Eagle. Up to 2,000-pound trailers. So, you know, it's not exactly a towing powerhouse by any stretch, but, you know, if you had a small boat or, you know, a jet ski or something, I guess Eagle would be good for that. And, you know, especially if you could use this as your daily driver, then you wouldn't need to also have a pickup truck, which I think would be convenient. So let's take a look at the last page, pickin'. And so you see this awesome, totally blacked out white letter tire Eagle Wagon Sport. And then you have your regular Eagle wagon with the wood grain and all that good stuff. And then up here, they don't even bother to take a picture. That's probably like a reused photo from the year before of the Eagle sedan, because by far the wagon was the better seller. And it's amazing how much the sport trim modernizes. You know, this look was looking a little bit dated by 1987. It's amazing how much of a difference the blacked out trim does to, you know, make the wagon look newer and cooler. So anyways, here's all your options. The service security plan. By this point, the buyer protection plan that AMC was famous for is gone. They really weren't offering a lot of options. You know, a lot of stuff just kind of came standard. And, you know, you still had some choices here. You know, the writing was on the wall that the end for the Eagle was on its way. And, you know, there it is, the end. Sadly, 1987 was the last year for American Motors, and certainly the last year for Eagle. And it's interesting, they don't even call it the American Motors or the AMC Eagle anywhere in the brochure. You know, they just say Eagle. Eagle is ready to take to the road. You know, they don't say anywhere Eagle is built by American. You know, I guess at the very end it says all Eagle vehicles are covered by the 1987 AMC New Vehicle Limited Warranty. So, you know, there's the word AMC there. And then on the back of the brochure, it says distributed by American Motors Sales Corporation. But, you know, it doesn't say AMC Eagle anywhere. It doesn't even say American Eagle, which was a marketing name they used. So, oh, and here's something cool. If you take the brochure and carefully fold it out, I guess that's supposed to be the entire photo of the sky there. So that's kind of neat. Very sad to say goodbye to the Eagle. I know it's a special car to many people. People who own them love them, and people who love AMC love the Eagle too. And like I said, it's hard to see the last car from an automaker before they disappear. But I think that's why it's so awesome to have this brochure and to hold on to it, because this is really an important piece of history. So I hope you enjoyed our look back through some of my old car brochures. I hope you got a good laugh and maybe learned something too. And of course, don't forget, a lot of these vehicles have been featured in previous episodes of AutoMoments. So you want to be sure and check those out and watch those. And of course, check out some of the other things on our channel too. So if you enjoyed our brochure tour or any of our other old car videos, be sure to share them with your friends. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.